Hello, my name is Scott Strader, and I am Director of the Counseling Center at the University of South Florida. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Larry Long, who is Director, Counseling and Educational Services and Assistant Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs at the University of Kansas Medical Center. Larry oversees a staff of 9 clinicians on a campus of over 3,200 health services students and medical residents. Larry has experience working with the point-and-click electronic medical record system in his center. So welcome, Larry, and thanks so much for joining me.
No, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Well, thanks. So just to get us started, I'm wondering if you'd start by telling us what you like most about the point-and-click software that you use, and what do you think are its strongest qualities?
Well, I experience the point-and-click software to be extremely easy to use once it's set up. And so before we were meeting, I had a 10-minute break and knocked out 3 encounter notes. And given the template drivenness of the thing, and also like I don't know how to describe this, but our treatment plans are sticky, meaning they go from one note to another and I can edit, update, and whatever. So are our diagnoses, so are our uh, some other information about the client that might be consistent. But it makes it so that I can generally knock out notes very quickly. We are a heavy user of online booking. And so we have our schedule set up so that our students have the ability to book an initial phone visit, which is our triage visit, or follow-up appointments if they've seen the provider before. We rely on the medical records feature of it so that we can be compliant with the 21st Century Cures Act. And we get secure messages from folks. We use their appointment booking reminders and all of those kinds of things, and really appreciate the connectivity and the ease for which I can, get to a student. And I guess the last thing relates to the reporting. The reporting is with the standard sets of reports, and then we also bought the report writer feature so that we could have customized reports. Find that I can get in there, and any administrator reaches out to me within a couple of minutes. I can give them the data that they're asking for, produce a report on demand to answer questions.
Super, that's great. What does your software do that makes it easier for you to do your job?
Probably the reporting function I'm into every day because either we're asking questions about our clinical workflow or efficiency or whatnot, or I'm preparing something to talk to some stakeholder groups to request or protect our resources. And being able to quickly get into getting data about things to tell a story is just so key. There's also some oversight tools where I can see if my clinicians are getting behind on their notes, or they have folks on their caseloads who don't have follow-up appointments. We have some key performance indicators and some dashboards that help me with that. Let me know if folks have um, group visits where people weren't checked in and all those kinds of things. So at a glance, I can look at that and then reach out to those providers and make sure that we've got all of those things sort of covered and responded to. So,
Great, great. What would you say are its weakest qualities, and what do you wish it did that it doesn't do?
well, it doesn't have a robust supervision component at this point. I know that from my past experience with Titanium, they sort of hacked the student or the patient profile and were able to create something that seems more robust than what Point and Click has. In having sort of reviewed the recent Point and Click user group slides where they're talking about their future updates, they've got all those features in the works. And so documenting supervision encounters and making sure that Our clients are being adequate, or our practicum students and postdocs are adequately supervised. Um, that is coming, but it's probably a less developed feature than what you might get with some other EMRs. So I would wish that would be different. Point and click is probably more like Metacad in its terms of pricing and pricing models. So they are doing, so it's not cheap. It's not like titanium, I think you can get for 4 or 5 thousand bucks a year or something like that, depending on the size of your center and some of the stuff that you want. Um, but they're coming out with this really cool AI component because they bought their own AI section. I'm not sure if we'll be able to afford that. That's the only dilemma, and I don't know if it'll be standard. My guess is with their development costs and whatnot, that it might be a cost up. But oftentimes what ends up happening is those things eventually become just a sort of a part of the product. And the notion of having clinicians be able to use AI to really quickly get their stuff done and to be more accurate and cued about getting their stuff done, I think is, in addition to all the other things AI can do, would be cool. But so the pricing model with point and click is difficult in that when they add some new features, sometimes there's added costs, and it may or may not be something we're budgeted to do. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So why did you or your institution select point and click over other electronic medical record platforms?
back in maybe 2011 or 2010, we decided we wanted to be more connected with our health service staff. And they were in the midst of a transition, moving away from their EHR vendor. And so we decided we're not a merged clinic. We don't have merged records, but there's a lot of cool sharing tools where we can share some limited information with our student health staff so that we can provide greater continuity with the care and the service that we provide to folks. Like, we don't share notes, but there's a medical summary that we would see and a counseling summary that they would see that would be able to tell us their engagement and their involvement and really facilitate referrals back and forth, facilitate being able to talk to people about meds and concerns related to that. And I think it's helped with our psychiatric staff to be able to have that kind of integration. So I think that was the initial push. And we've leveraged it to use for both keeping records on our academic support service side. So we've got 3 learning specialists and a writing specialist and a bunch of other students and whatnot with a separate security division. And that wasn't expensive. That was a pretty cheap uplift to get them in. We also use it for medical clearances. And as a health science campus, we have certain medical clearances folks have to get through, and our registrar's office manages that. We have a separate security division where they can't get in. And so we've been able to leverage it, and adding on user licenses has been inexpensive and easy to do. Um, so uh, that initial go for it was because of the desire to get closer to the health service provider, the health staff. And then the benefit of having done this is we could really expand it to a number of areas in the university so we could have greater synchronicity and continuity, and you know we're talking the same talk in terms of our
Hmm,
reports and those kinds of things.
great, great. What was the process in selecting the software platform? And if you were able to choose today what platform your center uses, would you still choose point and click?
We go through an RFP format like most institutions, and so we go out and gather bids. Back when it was, of course, different, more than a decade ago in terms of how that process worked. And we had like vendors would fly in back then, and we would have them make their pitch in an afternoon and do a demo, and it would be sort of all on site and all of that. And um, I would guess that nowadays it's all virtual, and we have a procurement office and officer who navigates us through what that process is and sets the stage and structure for how all of that goes. And my guess is if we were to do it again, we would be looking at all the major vendors in this space. I would, with no doubt, pick Point and Click again. It's been a great fit for us, and uh, also because we're leveraging it for so many different offices. It makes it easy that way. And I don't know Metacat this way, but I do have some familiarity with Titanium because I've used them for probably 16 years of my career, and or 15 of them, and don't know that they could do all these different areas. And I also don't think they have a portal for online booking or some of the same kind of stuff that we're more accustomed to use.
So how easy is it for new staff, particularly clinicians, to learn the platform? How much time do you usually spend during orientation training new staff to use the platform for their job?
Well, I hate to say this, it probably depends on how old the staff is, right? I mean, I that's probably an ageist thing to say, but um Point and Click has these online, or not, these video tutorials that you go through, and they're generally very short. They're like 5-minute segments. So you watch the video and then you play. So we set up our new trainees and our new clinicians with test patients, and they go in and they watch videos and do that. And usually we consolidate about 2.5 hours of time with our onboarding to have them go through the initial sort of go through of those videos. And as you know, I'm sure it's a huge waste of time to get people to watch videos like that unless they're going to very quickly use use the software. And so we throw them right into it right after they use it. And then we set up touch bases for the next couple of weeks so that we can answer questions or have conversations, or if it's a trainee, they talk to their supervisor. If it's a new staff, they'll talk with our associate director, and they have a lot of touch bases about what do you do in the system and how it works and so forth. I've hired a bunch of people in the last 5 years and have had zero issues with people just kind of diving into it within the first 2 or 3 weeks. They're um, seem very accustomed and knowledgeable. And then we do have some like bi-monthly, as a part of our clinical admin time, we'll spend 15 minutes talking about either a new feature, underused feature, or skill, or whatever, just to make sure that if the staff missed it as a part of the feature, that they would be aware of it.
Great, that's a great idea. So Larry, when your supervisor makes an urgent request for a specific piece of data, such as how many new students you've seen this quarter, or how many students you've seen this year with suicidal ideation, how much time do you have to spend obtaining this information from your supervisor?
Probably about 30 seconds. It'd probably take me 4 or 5 clicks to be able to get to that information. And it's because we get those questions, and either there is a report, or um, there's a couple of places where I can take reports and drop them so that certain staff have access to them. So if I'm not available, they can get to them. And then there's another layer where if it's not staff, it's administration, my associate directors, I would have them be able to have access to it. And then you can set those up by security division. So we have all of our favorites and they're all sort of queued up in folders. So once you get that set up and it's going, and then I'll take a report. Like if I get a question that I haven't answered before and it's going to take me longer than 30 seconds, I'll take some report from the standard library, and there's like 600 of them in there. And then I'll go and I'll make tweaks and changes. Like I'll add a demographic variable, or I'll have it search through a specific template or questionnaire for a data field. And then I'll add that to the report. They have this new thing they just announced that works like pivot tables. that's coming with their latest update, and forget what it's called. There's I can't remember what it's called. I think they call it like the crunch, the data cruncher or something. But there's a new thing where I won't have to do the take an old report, add a new parameter to it or something, where it'll let me both create the rows and the columns for the pivot table and then save my favorites. And then I can give permissions to various individuals to do that, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that sounds great. It's a great reporting function. How reliant are you on your IT department or others outside your center to maintain the software and or obtain data or information from your database?
Um, I meet bi-weekly for 30 minutes with the team that supports us. And because we've been using it so long, we don't really rely on them at all. I think if a new director jumped into my role, they would
Mhm.
rely on them, especially for initial setup and startup. It's not the kind of software that you'd want to have if you were a single person site. That would be awful. But it is the kind of software that if you have any sort of complexity with your group or your organization, it's a great one. There is a learning curve, I think, because um, I go in and set up all the scheduling templates, or now I have somebody else who sort of does that. And so I have a new provider and they come in and got to make sure that's all sort of queued up right so that our online portal booking works properly. And then there's some adjustments that have to be made with our branching pages for our online portal, booking thing or whatever. So there is some of that. And if you haven't done it before, either watching the videos or relying on the IT staff might get some time cumbersome, but I found that once you do it a couple of times, it's really easy. It doesn't take a lot of time. So,
So what do you spend a year for the platform? And to your knowledge, how does this cost compare to other platforms? You've touched on that a little bit, but can you
yeah.
be more specific?
Um, the platform, it depends on, if you integrate with your health service, right? And then it's like, what's the counseling's cost and what's the health service costs, and health service generally are much more expensive
Yeah.
and so forth. And then we buy it in 5-year increments because we get a mega discount for buying it in 5-year increments. And I believe the net cost annually for 5-year increments, if you were to look at it at just for a year basis, would be about somewhere between 10 and 11,000 per year. And that would be just for the side that I operate. The student health side would be more, but not a whole lot more. They would have their half plus a little bit more because some of the features that student health uses are way more complex and require a lot um, beyond what counseling would use.
Yeah. Okay, good to know. So it's a cost split for you and the health side,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Is there data that's difficult to obtain from your platform? And if so, how do you go about getting them?
I haven't experienced difficulty in getting data. I guess that it's probably like anybody who's trying to get data. If I messed up a data tag, like I forgot to put one in, or I change a form over time, and then I have that historical challenge, being able to figure out a solution with that is a complicated mess, but that's usually on me. Like I'm sure, like most sites, when COVID hit, we all pivoted very quickly, and I don't know what I did. I think I created a whole bunch of televisit visit types, which kind of blew up my old data because I should have been more thoughtful in trying not to just get it to function well, but to think about the historical side of things. So I have a certain date I go back to know if I'm looking at this data versus this data and what visit types trend over time and those kinds of things. And then as a result, in some of the other clinic that I manage, that I had mentioned when we started, or before we started recording, I made the visit type so that if I pivot again, I don't have to change anything. So so anyways, that's probably the harder part about the reporting. Less system based and it's more like human forethought based. It's been the problem.
It's the programming piece, right? You gotta be
Yeah.
thoughtful about the programming.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. How easy is it to reach technical support for point and click? And do you find technical support helpful? Do they provide ongoing staff training for new employees?
Um, it's we have an area called PNC Help, which has all of their help documents and videos and whatnot. And I'll go into that, and then there's a link to submit a ticket for support. Usually get a response back within an hour that the ticket is being forwarded to the appropriate team member. And then usually within a week, they've resolved it unless it's a crisis. If it's a crisis where our system locks up or something, they declare a code red, and what I have heard is that like everyone in the company gets a notice. It's kind of embarrassing. Like everyone in the company gets a notice that KU Med is down or something, and then they call you immediately and they sort of address whatever it is. But usually within a week, I can have less operations critical things addressed or understood or those kinds of things. I don't they don't offer they have like a once a month on a Tuesday, anyone that submit they have like a forum, an email forum that people can ask questions and say, hey, does anybody have a template they use or a report they use for this, that, or the other thing? And so any one of the like 350 point and click sites can submit to those the forums. And then they have like a or a monthly meeting where maybe it's a bi-week, every other week. I think it's every other week where they take questions that were in the forum and then they bring in the point and click experts to answer those questions and go through. And that's how they sort of set and create their agenda. I haven't participated in those. I haven't felt like there was a need for that. They'll have some webinars and those kinds of things. Usually it's like once a year, twice a year, but it's not any more extensive. They're constantly adding new training videos to the PNC Help, but we haven't had any on-site point and click specific training really since we went live back in 2012. So.
How often does your platform update or upgrade? Do you pay extra for upgrades? And how often is the platform, how open is the platform to improvements suggested by users?
We get upgraded about once a month. We are one of the few sites because of our longevity that isn't hosted. And when we renew our contract in 2027, you can be sure that I'm going for a hosted solution so that that takes all of the software off of university servers and puts it on point and click, puts it on the vendor to manage because those automatically get updated. I have to request the updates and then we have to go through somewhat of a convoluted process because they've got to get into the servers. Um, but those updates happen once a month. Is again, it's more of our we'll see a new feature and we'll submit a ticket or request and get that sort of done. What were the other questions you had? You had a couple of other ones.
Yeah, how open do you think the platform is to improvements suggested by users?
Um, I- as I understand it, and usually the feedback I get when I suggest one is they say, thank you, got it. And then I'll hear back from them if there's sort of a certain volume of people suggesting or asking the same kinds of things. When I've talked to the support staff, they tell me I never know what I'm asking for when I make those requests. Like Am I asking for like $100,000 in engineering? Am I asking for something really light? I know that there was a site, I don't know, maybe like 5 or 6 years ago that had a lot of concerns about the system support for gender identity. And then the system did a major revamp of all of those fields and areas, and really based on a bunch of sites saying, hey, enough already, we got to get right on this. And the site was responsive. I know we're in a political climate that's different now, and that some institutions have funding limits because of stuff like that. But all these things you can turn on, turn off, or whatever in terms of gender identity stuff, but they seemed quite responsive to that kind of thing. So.
Good. Are there particular characteristics or structures of a center that you believe would work really well with your platform? And also centers that you think would not necessarily be a good fit for the platform?
As I mentioned, I think smaller sites would find this is like hitting a nail with a sledgehammer. And the complexity, and I suppose if I was a smaller site, but I wanted something for student health, disability services, or a number of areas, it would be a decent solution because everybody's got to get something to track their stuff. I think they do conduct also. They do like conduct incidents, but so small sites, it probably is a bad fit. I suppose I don't know. I guess when I've talked to, I've been using the software for a really long time, and when I talk to sites that are titanium specific, there's a dilemma with university counseling identity that if you get point and click and you're a part of student health and other entities, are you going to get smushed? Are you going to get diminished in a substantial way if you have some kind of integration and transparency and exposure? And one of the advantages of titanium, I suppose, is to keep things separate and keep your identity separate, and it's a lower cost thing. So I suppose if there's a site that is worried about, having their budget smushed and diminished in some way, and at the same time, I'd argue that's a workaround for a problematic business practice. I mean, that would be my argument for that. But I get it. I mean, I get the reality of that for a lot of folks. So
Well, good. I appreciate your insights, Larry. That's great.
yeah.
Those are our questions for you on point and click. Really appreciate taking some time and sharing your expertise with us. I think this is going to be really helpful for folks who are kind of weighing different EHRs against each other. So thanks so much.
Great. You're welcome.